Rhino here with Vitamin C Entertainment. Today I'm going to show you how to tech a Pioneer CDJ rig. Alright, we're going to go over the basics of hooking it up and then doing a little initialization so it's ready for performance. This similar process works for pretty much all models after the cdj3000 with some changes within menus, but the same concepts apply. All right, so here's an ideal hookup. Right now, this only has 2 decks. And what I consider ideal is when you have, each mixer has its own outputs. You have a stereo output for audio, and then you have also a digital output. Both of these can carry audio, and you only need one. But in best case scenario, plugging in both would be okay. So since this deck is on our left, and this one's on our right, we're going to assign these as decks 2 and decks 3. Okay, that means we're going to assign them as decks 2 and 3, and we're also going to plug them into channels 2 and 3 respectively. Okay, so deck number 3 here, we have this cable going into channel 3 for the line input. You want to make sure that you use line and not phono. Phono is only for turntables and your gain will be way too high. So you want to make sure it's on the line input, and then on your digital inputs, we're on channel 3. And then over here, I have both the stereo audio cable and the digital output plugged into line on channel 2 and digital channel 2 respectively as well. So those are your audio connections. You can just do just digital, or you can do just stereo audio. They're both the same. Digital, I consider to be it's considered to be a higher quality, so I would go to that. All right, so now that we have them hooked up, we have to set the inputs. So up here is your channel selector. Each channel can have different inputs. So on channels 2, we're going to turn it to digital, and on channel 3, we're going to do digital. We could also do line, but I just tend to prefer digital as kind of a default first choice. But let's say our digital jack is having an issue, or the cable's having an issue. What we can do is, since we have both hooked up, we can quickly switch it to line, and you should have no issues or even dropping of audio. So you basically have it hooked up 2 different ways. All right, something else, you can kind of like level out their EQ. You don't really have to do that, but since I'm here and we're looking at it, go ahead. All right, the next connection is going to be your signal. Okay, your data connection, all right, your network link. So you're likely going to need a switch. This is an 8-port. I recommend 8 ports because then you can plug in extra devices for things like show control. Plug in each unit here, the network in, link cable on the mixer and on the deck. So there's 3 units. You always want it plugged in the mixer as well as the CDJs. There are different effects that the mixer can apply when it knows that what the CDJ is playing. And it also gives you something called the red decks. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so we got our physical connections hooked up. Now we need to assign the players. Right now, see, this says player 1, and it's not plugged into channel 1, so we need to change that. Up here at the top, it says utility, it says menu, and if you have a long press, it goes to utility. So go ahead and hold that down for about a second. Okay, and we're going to go down to Pro DJ Link. This is for the cdj3000, and we're going to put this down to number 2. Okay, so we are on player number 2. Now, if you have a thumb drive hooked up, or if you have basically, if you have media plugged in, you can't change the player number. So if that menu is grayed out, unplug your media, or you can even just unplug the link cable for a second, and then you can reassign it real easy. All right, this player is already on player 3. So we don't have to change this one, but it would be the same process either way. So now check this out. See how this deck is white? When I turn up channel 2, it turns red. This is part of that connection between the mixer and the player. So seeing those decks turn up red is a real quick check to see that you have it assigned correctly, and that they're talking to each other and the cables are good and everything's working as expected. You know, sometimes we have had these network switches kind of go out on us, so it's not unusual to have a backup. All right, so now I'm going to put in a flash drive and we're gonna check the tracks, make sure that we can play some music. So put in a flash drive, you hit source, USB, and there's a bunch of tracks here. Let's just play this one, okay? So I'm gonna play it. Notice it's playing backwards, so get that going forwards, and check it out. We've got our meters lighting up. So that means we're getting audio. All right, that's the first part of our check. The next one is to make sure that we can play on this deck as well. So I'm gonna go to source, you go to USB, and notice that this is actually the same. There's no thumb drive in this one. It's pulling from the USB on the other one. So the fact that I can see these tracks and they're loading as expected, I hit play. Now both are playing. I don't have speakers hooked up, so you know we could do a sound check at this point. You can see now the mains are going over here. Okay, so at this point, you're pretty much at the most fundamental setup. You've hooked up the power, the audio, and the signal link, and you've checked each deck, and then you also made sure to assign it to the right channel input. Now, if you had 4 decks, you would do the same thing on all 4. You'd have another one over here, and that'd be player 1, another one over here for player 4. At this point, you've effectively set up this for performance ready. A few other things that I kind of like to do, you know, kind of like adjust. You can kind of level things out. Sometimes I put the jog adjust in the middle so that way, but that's some things DJs can adjust and they know how to do that. You can always check that your channels are hitting through. That way the crossfader, these are some things that can maybe throw you off if you're kind of not getting audio, your crossfader might be on or something like that. Okay, all right, there we go. All right, we're here, part 2 of the video. This is kind of the extended tech right here. You've already set up the CDJs. Now what you're gonna do is make sure that the firmware is updated, or how to update the firmware. And then we'll also do a quick diagnostic to make sure the most common buttons that are problematic are working as expected. All right, so here we are. Let's say we've got this CDJ set up and we want to update its firmware. It's really easy. All you do is make sure you have firmware on the hard drive, on the thumb drive. You turn off the unit, okay? You're gonna hold down 2 buttons. This might be a little tricky with the phone in my hand. Reloop and exit in queue while powering it on, okay? Power it on while holding those buttons, and it's gonna do a quick self-check. As it boots up, connect USB, it's connected, and let's see, you can see my reflection in there. Checking, update file, please wait. And you'll see a menu. And this one might just, I think it's already updated, so it probably will say unnecessary, but this is what it'll look like. You'll get some sort of menu. Looks like update's already complete because it was. Notice that the versions are the same. Now we're done. That's it. You've updated the firmware on the cdj3000. All right, last little clip. We're gonna close it up here. This is the diagnostic mode or the service mode. Okay, so your CDJ is off, and this service mode really helps it make it really easy to figure out if something's not acting right. The 2 buttons you're gonna hit are memory and tempo while turning it on, and we're gonna enter service mode when it boots up. Notice that the screen looks a little bit different. What you can do is you can use these buttons up here to kind of tab through it. And the one I'm looking for is check mode number 4 of operations. And what this lets us do is check the buttons. And I'll tell you right now, the biggest problems are play and cue. So what I want you to do is tap the play, make sure it's real snappy. You can see it, you can hear me tapping, you can see it on the screen, the cue's working as expected. Just make sure they're real snappy, okay? So there's other things you can do as well, like check the jog wheel, or you can check any other button and it'll tell you. And there's different modes that you can kind of, you know, check different aspects of it, like the fan or the touch screen. But we don't really need to mess with that most of the time. It's mostly just making sure that the play and the cue button are responding as expected. All right, that is my time. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. Are you ready to diagnose and tech your own CDJ rig for the big show you've got going on. All right, catch you later.